You bring in Michael Vick as the head coach, and all of a sudden, Norfolk State will be involved in what I expect to be a very similar to Hard Knocks type of situation. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. I'm still rocking from the theme song. Shout out to my guy 97 for the tunes. But today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code Locked On College at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We're going to wrap up today's episode with Blake Harper has Howard in his top 4 of teams he would like to lead the transfer portal for. But I'm not getting my hopes up in saying that I think that his return to the Bison is likely. In segment 2, Clark Atlanta made a big splash at quarterback, and it tells me a lot of what I need to know about the future for the Panthers. But we kick this whole thing off with lights, camera, and action. We talk about Blockbuster. We're talking about superstardom. We're talking about Norfolk State University because they are getting a docu-series, and it's going to center around Michael Vick. But if done correctly and how I would personally like it, it should still be an in-depth look at individuals on Norfolk State's football team. I understand that Michael Vick is the star. I understand that he provides a superstardom at head coach that is only second to Deion Sanders, and I think it's a significant gap above Eddie George and Deshaun Jackson. That's my personal opinion, that his superstar status is above those other two coaches who would be connected to him. And you see this with the BET docuseries. So the reason I say I expect it to be something like Hard Knocks is it was just recently greenlit. And it was recently greenlit in the middle of April. So when I see it greenlit in the beginning of April or middle of April, that would tell me that they haven't started filming anything yet. So when are they going to film? Are they going to film during the off season? Like I'm talking April, or excuse me, August, July. Are they going to film in that time frame? I don't think so, because allow me to read what kind of the expectations are around this activity, so to speak. I guess I don't know the proper way to say it. The show itself and what the expectations are for that. But the expectation is to have locker room speeches to show the transformation from a man to a coach. So this is the exact quotes. Let me not try to summarize it, but offering an intimate portrait of a man reclaiming purpose through mentorship, service, and second chances. I think it's interesting because they have done a docu-series before. It's called The Michael Vick Project, and I think it was all about after he got out and what he was doing after all of the dog situation that he had to deal with. But there was a part in here that I thought was interesting. I want to find the exact quote. So this docu-series will pull back the curtain on emotional stakes of coaching, from locker room speeches to personal reflections on redemption, family, and growth. Vick's journey isn't just about wins and losses. It's about rewriting narratives and building something meaningful at Norfolk State. The part about locker room speeches tells me that this is going to happen throughout the series or throughout the season. You could have locker room speeches in August, but it's not the same. It just isn't. I think that the expectation should be that this will follow and chronicle Michael Vick's first year. The reason I'm extremely excited for this Norfolk State docuseries, let's just call it what it is, a Michael Vick docuseries, is because A, it should still shine a light of some capacity. This Michael Vick docuseries, even though it's going to be centered around the head coach, centered around his journey, it should still shine some light on individual players. I hope that you see these type of shows and there's some player who comes out as the star of, oh man, we love Israel Carter, for example. But the main event is the main event. And when it comes to Michael Vick, you want to see how does he adapt in his first year as coach. That's the difference. Yeah, I could get Michael Vick a docuseries 5-6 years down the line. I could go follow one of the more charismatic coaches like a Trey Oliver. I could follow him and it would be great content. But at the same time, seeing what Vick does in his first year, there's going to be struggles. There's going to be moments when he feels lost. Who does he lean on? When I want to see everything that goes into it, not just the record, but I want to see the process of him becoming a head coach. I think that this is going to be Hard Knocks ish, where it's very behind the scenes. I'm not a huge Hard Knocks person. To be honest, I'm not really a big reality TV person. All in all, I'm not really a reality TV person. I'm mostly a what happened on the field type of guy with this. But I'll give it a check out because I looked at who was it? J.R. Smith. I looked at J.R. Smith's docuseries when he was on the A&T golf team. It was beautiful. I loved it. I thought it was so cool that he was on the golf team. And it allowed me. I think the J.R. Smith docuseries that was on Prime Video is a very good template for the Michael Vick docuseries to follow. Because yes, it was all about J.R. Smith and it was about his ability to assimilate into this coach. It was about his ability to move within the team, but you still saw different athletes on the A&T golf team that were involved. They had major storylines. And if we're talking about a head coach, yes, I want to see what his players are doing. I want to see what practice is like. I want to see who else is giving speeches. These are things that I want to see. So when I looked at the J.R. Smith, I stumbled across this, but I really think this is a great idea. I think that we should look at the J.R. Smith docuseries on Prime Video as a great example of what the Michael Vick series could be. Of course, you're going to focus on the biggest star, but he is coming into a new culture. He is stepping into a new role that he is unfamiliar with. This is going to be new, and there's going to be people along the way who help him. There are going to be people along the way that he has to interact with on a consistent basis. There should be shine given to Norfolk State players. It should not just be, man, look at Michael Vick in his locker room speech. Look at Michael Vick in this meeting. Oh, man, Michael Vick just had his first game. What is he going through mentally? I want to see what about the quarterback? What about the offensive lineman? I think that if we're talking about him being a leader of men and we're focusing on mentorship, which is something that the article says that they plan on doing in this series, then we should also get an in-depth look at the people that he is leading. That's me personally, though. That's what I want to see in this Michael Vick docuseries that should be a Norfolk State docuseries. But Clark Atlanta. Oh, also, let me just say this real quick. Israel Carter, the kahunas on this guy to wear 7 when Michael Vick is the coach. I mentioned him earlier, and I meant to say that. To wear 7 when he was on there, and he's already talking like the starting quarterback. I know they had another guy come in. I can't remember who it was. I think he couldn't be involved in spring. But Israel Carter is doing everything that he is supposed to do in order to not allow that to be a conversation when the summer starts. So this is what Israel said. Everything was one step at a time. He wanted us to just focus on one play, one install, one rep at a time. That's all we can do. Control what we can control, and everything else will be just fine. And I felt that when he was out there today, how the offense was operating and everything. I'm super proud of those guys. Really, that last part about being super proud of those guys just feels like in general, feels like a leadership stance. And as a quarterback, you want those small things. Those are things that we're going to look at. And he didn't back down from wearing 7. So I love that as well. And Vick called Izzy the ultimate competitor. He said that he thought he played pretty well. The processing was good. He thought that there was a couple of plays you could have made earlier, but you're never going to say everything was perfect. You're never going to say that. But all in all, Israel Carter, had a good showing in spring practice. He's impressed Michael Vick, and I expect him to be featured prominently in this docuseries. So luckily, I still had that article just up because I was reading it a couple of days ago. You ever, just forget to close out tabs? I think I read like 3/4 of the article and I had to go do something, and I never came back to it. Shout out to that because now I just was able to find it real quick. Anyway, Clark Atlanta is making a big splash at quarterback because David Wright is out. Zy McDonald is in, and it tells me everything I need to know about the future of the Panthers. And I'll tell you exactly what that really means as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, if you're not checking it consistently, it can really feel like it just, now you see me, now you don't in your account. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, though. It's here to help you by being your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's a command center of sorts. You can track your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. You know what? I started using Monarch Money and I realized where all of my money was going. So now I'm able to take care of my finances in a much more deliberate fashion. And no more needing 5, 7, 10 apps to get it done. Monarch is everything you need bundled into one nice package. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked on NFL Draft with Sanchez and Parsons, because the big day is tomorrow. You're going to want to be prepared for the round 1 and then round 2 and 3 on day 2. Woo-wee! I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm so excited. I try to control myself when I'm on here so I don't just start going on at lengths about it, but I am extremely excited. One thing that I think you should be excited about is Zy McDonald going to Clark Atlanta. Now, where this gets very interesting, where this becomes very, very interesting, is the fact that David Wright exists. How I internalized this the first time we talked about it is that this was something that could be fought. Let me catch you up in case you don't know what I'm talking about. Let me not talk like we know. David Wright, excellent. SIAC Player of the Year 2 years in a row, once at Allen, once at Clark Atlanta, both times with Teddy Keaton. Excellent quarterback. You're going into this year thinking you're going to have David Wright and Keaton for another year. Wright was declined a redshirt year that he thought he was going to have after he suffered a season-ending injury 5 games into the season. So, to my knowledge, and how I heard it was at this time, presently, and those things all mattered. All those things mattered. What I'm hearing now is David Wright is out. That's just how the wording is. And me as a person, I do believe that phrasing is pretty important. And I try to be careful with the way that I phrase things, because I understand the smallest tweak in how something is said changes the message. And going from present to out, completely different conversation. If David Wright is out, or let's not even get into too much speculation and removing Zy McDonald from the conversation. Zy McDonald coming to Clark Atlanta makes me think, even if you can fight it, the chances of being able to reverse the D2 decision on David Wright's medical red shirt, very unlikely. Very unlikely. They expect this to be it. I don't think that you go get a Zy McDonald if you don't expect that your quarterback is going to be gone, because you want to. And it's funny because Zy McDonald didn't do a lot at JSU. Like, he did not do a lot for Jackson. He did have a big moment in the SWAC championship game, but all in all, he was third fiddle. He played behind Cam McCoy, and Jacoby Morgan. So he didn't do too much. Like, you look at his numbers outside of that SWAC championship game, he threw the ball one time against Mississippi Valley State. He ran the ball one time versus Mississippi Valley State, 5 times versus Alcorn, and then one time in the championship game against South Carolina State in the Celebration Bowl. But all in all, you're not looking at a player who really did a lot, but it's the fact that he does have that SWAC championship on his resume. He does have the explosiveness and the dual threat ability on his resume, or in his toolbox, I'd rather say. So when you look at a guy like Zy McDonald coming to Clark, you feel like he came to be the starter. And yes, everybody comes to be the starter, but some people come to be in competition, and they understand that. Zy McDonald feels like he came to be the starter. You know, he was at Louisiana. He was at Louisiana Lafayette. I hate saying Louisiana. I hate that. I grew up calling it ooh la la, and I'm just now beginning to stop calling it that. But to just say Louisiana as if it's the biggest school in that state is crazy to me. Sorry, they'll never just be Louisiana to me. They'll always be Louisiana Lafayette, but I'm trying to give them the proper respect of calling them Louisiana publicly. But that was ill. Um, anyway, he was at Louisiana. Then he went to Jackson State. And I guess you go in FBS, FCS, D2. It continues a trajectory in downward subdivisions. But it just feels like he was going to get a better shot somewhere else. So during that spring game, let's do look at that. During that spring game, it wasn't as if they were just lost and they didn't know what they were going to do. So they did have Kai Brown out there. And Kai Brown was a player who he looked good during the spring game. They liked what they saw from him at quarterback. He's a young guy. At worst, or at best for Brown, this is going to be a competition. At best. At worst, this is McDonald's job to lose. And I think he'll get an opportunity to lose it, but I think I think you see McDonald come in and play with the ones. Now, the reason I say this is telling a lot is because I don't think that you even go get Zy McDonald or even worry about getting him if you had confidence that David Wright could get his red shirt overturned. This feels like a contingency plan or a backup plan just in case something goes wrong. Maybe they just don't think it's likely. And you got to reassure yourself, this is quarterback. You were in the SIAC championship last year. You don't get the opportunity to say, we're going to put all of our chips on hoping they reverse their decision. If they do, and Zy McDonald has to be on the bench, then he has to be on the bench. Because I'll tell you right now, David Wright comes in, he's not going to have any conversation about him not starting. I just think that's unrealistic. But anyway, Blake Harper, speaking of things that are unrealistic, him returning to Howard just doesn't feel likely to me. It's just not the way that people operate in today's college basketball landscape. Let's get into that at a real more deeper level as we continue and wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me. Blake Harper has Howard as one of his top 4 schools as he's entering or as he's leaving the portal, but I just don't think that it's realistic that he'll come back. I don't think it's likely he'll come back. There's a world where I see it because Howard has done a really good job of continuing to apply pressure. That's what this tells me right now. Let's look at Blake Harper's top 4 coming out of the portal. So he walked into the portal, obviously earlier this offseason. I think that was probably one of the bigger pieces of news. And now he's released his final 4. I think there was a report that he had committed to Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. It was a report he had committed to Maryland, and he quickly came out to shut that down. And not only is he not connected to Maryland anymore, not only is he not to be said to be committed to Maryland anymore, he's not connected to him either. Blake Harper's final 4 is Creighton, Howard, LSU, Ohio State. LSU, they dropping bags, okay? So I think that, if I'm not mistaken, Locked On LSU host, I follow him on Twitter, Matt Moscona, great follow, great host. If I'm not mistaken, he said, look, LSU paid for that number 1 portal transfer player in men's basketball. They dropped the bag to get a big-time player. So they're coming in with heavy pockets looking to lighten. This right here is going to be very difficult to turn down. And I think LSU is a great representation of what it looks like in the portal for a lot of these mid-major FCS, depending on what sport you're talking about. But in this case, mid-major players who are exploring their options. LSU is going to come in with a pretty sizable check. I'm not going to say it's take care of yourself money for some years, but it's going to be a good check, more likely than not. Creighton is a good basketball team. I don't know what their pockets are like. Ohio State, I know, has deep pockets. They're Ohio State. So when I'm talking about whether or not Blake Harper is going to come back in the portal, I never get my hopes up because I just think there's an offer that nobody can refuse. And the question becomes, does Blake Harper get that offer for him? And that offer looks different, right? So we talking about LSU and we talking about offers you can't refuse. I would say the biggest NIL story of this offseason, I don't know, actually. That dude from UCLA, now UCLA, came over from Tennessee. He might have it. But prior to that, it was Bryce Underwood in the just every week, the Michigan numbers was going up and up and up and up. And he ends up reaching to a point where I think it was double-digit dollars in the millions, double-digit millions. There was a point where he just couldn't refuse that. I can guarantee you the majority of collegiate quarterbacks are not getting the Blake or the Bryce Underwood offer. So now the question becomes, if I'm quarterback 50 or I'm quarterback 15, let's say that, I can get a good amount of money. But is my number I can't refuse the same as Bryce Underwood's number? If it is, I'll probably never get to that amount. That's the way I look at it. So with Blake Harper, is he ever going to get to that amount? I think LSU, I think Ohio State can definitely put that figure in front of him. It's about would they? Harper is an extremely talented player. And I'll tell you one thing that really, I was reading an article from a while ago, and they said something that made me think about whether or not he would leave Howard. The only thing that came back to my mind was financially, this is the decision that we see people make so often. Of course, he's going to choose to go. But I wanted to go back to the article and see if I could find the quote again to deliver to you. This is what his dad said. Howard, what they've done for my son, I can't put a dollar value on. All the things they're doing, it's extra and above and beyond for him to be able to feel comparable to some of his friends that are going to these Power 5 schools. It's a delicate juggle between wanting money and wanting to play. At Howard right now, we're getting really good competition and we're able to show all of our skills. Okay. Blake himself says, Howard has been the greatest decision in my 19 years of living coming here. That doesn't mean nothing will change in the future, but right now in my present life, being at Howard has been my best decision. And they go on to talk about how in this article, I didn't remember this part, but in this article, they talk about how Howard was voted as one of the most innovative NIL programs. And I think that helps. If we're talking about trying to retain a player that has people throwing bags of money at them every day, you want to have some sort of cash that you have. And he talks about valuing relationships. Howard can give you that 100%. If there's one thing Howard's going to give you, it's relationships. Okay. Secondly, you have an innovative NIL program. So you will get paid well, maybe not comparably well, but you will get paid well. But they're trying to make you brands. Brand endorsements here, brand endorsement there, like just basically be the face of Howard basketball. And I think that comes with a whole different type of bag, So we'll see what they end up doing. I think that is actually extremely fascinating, the idea of the Final Four, and it includes Howard because he entered the portal from Howard. Howard still being on the list tells you that they never stopped recruiting him. They've lost guys like Elijah Hawkins as of recent. So they're familiar with what it takes they're familiar with what doesn't get the job done. I would assume that they're going even harder for Blake Harper. It just does not happen often that you get a player like this that comes to your school. The family ties, the innovative NIL, the relationships, the history, just the absolute long-term ties that exist whether or not he leaves Howard. I think that they will play a part. It's just a matter of how much of a part that they end up playing. That's it. But to me, Blake Harper returning to Howard just doesn't feel likely because I think the money will be a little too much. If he comes back, I'd be surprised. solely because of that. I think everything else, you have conversations about how much you'll play, the situation you already know, coach that you know, the development of you from your beginning of your freshman year into the end. But the truth is, I don't think people hop in the portal to get out. And if he really has been having conversations with people for a long time before he officially got into the portal, I don't know. I'm just hearing stuff as far as things that have been written. He was called the most tampered with player in college basketball. If he really was having these conversations before he hopped in the portal and he still hopped in the portal, there's something in there he likes. I don't think he's coming back. I hope he does because Howard is better with him. And I would like for them to keep a star. They lost Elijah Hawkins after, I think, his freshman year, too. I would like for them to keep a star. Anyway, speaking of stars, we have 3 HBCU prospects who are the most likely to hear their name called in the NFL draft. There's Robert McDaniel, Elijah Williams, and Carson Vincent. I think Vincent is probably the most likely of the triumvirate, but those are your 3 most likely teams to get hired. To me, we couldn't do we couldn't do an NFL draft breakdown without giving them their own show. So that's exactly what we did with Gerald Huggins. In the meantime, in between time, though, that'll be tomorrow. In the meantime, in between time, until next time we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.